Okay. So I married Margaret, and that was in uh, April. No, that's her birthday, April the 25th. March the 17th, if I remember rightly. I get all my dates mixed up these days. But we got married in Cape Town at St. George's Cathedral. And then we came up by train through to Bulawayo. Our wedding reception was at the Arthur's Seat Hotel in Cape Town, and our wedding breakfast cost £4.50, and that includes champagne. Now we came up, and first of all we stayed in a flat in Romana Buildings opposite Victoria Hotel. Then after a few months, Margaret worked for Calderwood's. She worked with Doug Campbell and Mr. Calderwood himself. Now, it's not very confident at first, but eventually she got over all her problems with shorthand and all that sort of thing in those days, because it was very different towards us today. Well, from Romana Buildings, we moved up onto the Hillside Road to our little Ponduki place. It wasn't very nice. And one day, there were so many, in the rainy season, there were so many frogs on the veranda, or stoop as we used to call it. There were thousands of them. And I used a shovel to shovel the frogs off the veranda. Now, the frogs were at least 10 inches in size each. Now, the rains were so great in that particular place in Burnside that there was a well in the garden, and there was a tree alongside the well, and the tree dropped down into the well. It dropped at least 10 or 15 feet, so the tree was actually planted in the well. The well was, of course, then scrap. At that time, I worked at CMED, and Bob Watt, who lived further up the road, used to pick me up and take me into work. So we'd got a car at that time. We got a little Morris Minor, and which we bought in Gwello. Why we went to Gwello to buy a car, I have no idea. We took a train to Gwello, and when we got to Gwello, it was late, and we slept in at the station. We weren't one for spending money on hotel. We would have been in the middle of the night in any case, getting to Gwello. Well, after that, we won the money in the lottery, 2000, with Eric and Nina, and we started to build the cottage. Well, we built the cottage. Well, after we built the cottage, we built it with the idea that the firstborn was Paul, and he slept in the same room as we did, in a cot. And it was very, very cramped, really, I suppose, the cottage was for three of us. But we were comfortable. Then when we had Jeremy came along, and so we built another bedroom on, and we built. Jeremy had the bedroom that we had, and we had one at the back of the cottage, which we'd built on. But that was a step down. When I say a step down, it was a physical step down into because the copy, we couldn't go any lower, and the roof was sloped in such a way that we badly designed that particular spot. Mind you, we were very comfortable in the cottage, really. Then we built. How we come to build a big house was quite funny. We were at a party at Finn Jensen's at Christmas, and there were two Danish chaps who'd come down from Zambia, And those two chaps, I've forgotten their names at the moment, they said at the party that they were looking for work and they were going to open a business. So I said, "Oh, build me a house," and and um, and I said, "When can you start?" And they said, "Tomorrow." I said, "Oh, well, look, it's Boxing Day tomorrow. You better start in the new year." And so I'd sketched, for many years I've been sketching out ideas on top of the copy, because it was solid rock. And all we had to do was put a ring beam around the copy. And all I did was drill holes in the copy and dropped 1-inch pins into the copy so the ring beam had got real ties into the rock itself. Then we went out and put legs to the same height as the copy, but the house was overbuilt, oversized. Um, it was about 4,000 square feet, if I remember rightly. We had 4 bedrooms, which were, all the bedrooms were on top of the copy. Then there was a nice big bedroom for Margaret and I, which because I badly designed this house in one way that we didn't have a nook as such, and it's so important in a house to have a small place area in which you can be just a small family side place. Where we did have our best advantage was on one of the verandas, where as we extended out, the kitchen and the lounge were out on over, shall we say, over the garage, and then behind the lounge and the kitchen was a veranda. Now that was a lovely veranda we always ate all our meals on that veranda. Very seldom do we eat anywhere else. We very seldom use the dining room at all. In fact, we got a lovely dining room table and chairs. It was beautiful furniture, but we never used it really, only for high days and holidays. That's when Debbie came along. Jeremy, they were, I won't say grown up, they were getting older, and we'd finished building the house, and but we didn't bother to move in for a few weeks. I don't know, months. We were still in the cottage. We were quite happy there. Then all of us, one day, Margaret took a bee into her bonnet with the kids and moved the whole place into our new house, our big house, or from the cottage into the big house. And one of the things that we got there, and it's always annoyed Jeremy, but was because when we were building, we had concrete. And when Paul was born, there was wet concrete around, and he stood in there, and we got his footprints in there. And we got Debbie's, but we missed out on Jeremy. He was most annoyed with me for that. And so it's one of the things I regret and think of often. So I'm sorry, Jeremy, for my misdemeanor there. But then when we were building the house, the trade fair was on, and Benny Grevler had got a stand with a full kitchen of kitchen furniture, because the kitchen was at least 25 feet long, and it extended into a tunnel which went underneath. It was under the copy. It was under the bedrooms, this tunnel, and we kept it as a junk room. And we got a pump in there because I made my own geyser. Now, we couldn't use the shower very well, because we got no where the geyser was at virtually the same height as the bathroom, the shower. There wasn't a big enough differential, and until I put a pump in there to get the pressure up, it was a waste of time using a shower. But we had beautiful bathrooms. Each Paul had a bedroom, Jeremy had a bedroom, Debbie had her own bedroom, and the bedrooms were quite big. They were 10 by 12, if I remember rightly. 10, maybe could have been a little bit bigger. We all were built in cupboards, interlocked. Our bedroom had all built-in cupboards. Then there was a study room as well, and that was good. Each bedroom had its own veranda. Sometimes the boys would like to sleep on the veranda, and they put when it was very hot, they would sleep on their verandas. But what I should have done with that house, and I've been thinking about it, I thought about it so often since, it was where we got a little toilet and a wash hand basin in the hall. For guests, it was quite a nice little area. But the outside, there was a veranda, and then there was a copy which was on top of the granite boulder. And what I should have done was put a couple of pillars down and built a little nook encompassing the hall as well, taken the window out, and then we'd have had a little nook which would have been a family room. And that was what was missing in that house. Well, Paul and Jeremy, they both went to CBC, and Debbie went to, I think it was, first of all, they went to Tennyson School. And when I think back of the running races, sports days at Tennyson, and I can still see the kids running in there, and all the kids that it was a wonderful little school, actually, really. It was at the back of Teachers Training College, and the school was. So two boys went there. Now, Debbie didn't go there. She went to Hillside, first of all, it was a primary school for youngsters, and she went there. Then she went to Townsend School, I think it was called, and all the kids did reasonably well. But Paul was taking maths with Mrs. Harlan. Now, Mrs. Harlan was Fred Harlan's wife, but she was a little bit way out individual. But when I was paying for a bursary for a chap to go to university in Johannesburg. Well, Mrs. Harlan said to Paul, "Why doesn't your dad send you to university?" And when he came back home, I'd never been to university. It never crossed my mind, to be quite honest, that the boys should go to university. But they did to go to university. They had to go to Aurora for that, or Salisbury. And I think they stayed with a lady on the main road there on the way to Avondale, and which was quite close to the university. And then I think one of the boys went and stayed with a lady who had a motor accident later on and was unfortunately killed in that motor accident. And we all went. But I remember going to a party at that lady's house. And so one gets tied up with people over the years, and you still have memories of them for that. Well, Paul went and worked for I think it was Cooper and Lybrand's. And Jeremy went to work for a firm in Harare. Um, I have got the name of it. I think it was associated with Anglo-American or something like that. But I've forgotten the name. It was not the normal run of firms. Then, then between whiles, then Jeremy opened a firm uh, with growing not worms, growing these caterpillars for making silkworms. But one of the problems he had was he couldn't get enough of the leaves of the tree, that black berry that stains you like heck. And that really was unfortunate. It was just that didn't quite work out for him that there. What happened with Paul, he worked at Cooper's, and I think that was in Bulawayo that he worked there, whereas Jeremy was working in Harare. That's why I haven't got the connection quite as much. I used to go occasionally to Harare myself. We've got a branch in Harare, and a radiator and tinning branch there. And maybe Jeremy was right to move up to Harare at that time when he did, and because it gave him a footing in the place. And he was a lot wiser than us. We stayed in Bulawayo, and Bulawayo has never, never, ever regrettably grown. In fact, it's gone downhill over the years. Then Jeremy opened his business, Belina, and he was being very successful, very proud of him in there. And he's worked very hard. Paul had his own little business called, now I'm going to forget the name of his little firm. And he was making solder string and that, but he spent a lot of time in radiator and tinning. He was only just across the road. So we were able to supply him bits of machinery which were redundant in our place. Or we'd grown out of. And he was producing solder string, for people like Supersonic, cord solder. And it was quite a good little venture, really. But then, what else happened? Then Margaret and I, we came back to Jersey in the year 2000, and we left the boys in Zimbabwe. Paul had got a house in Malandila, Bradfield, Malandila, and Jeremy was married Mika. That was another thing. They had their wedding at the in the Matopus. Oh, that was a glorious wedding. That I must describe it is it was on a hill and in the middle of the bush, and it was really a church organisation, and it was, shall we say, a youth camp, but on the top of a hill. And we had to walk there. You couldn't drive up there or anything like that. But we walked up a really rough path, and on the top of this kopje or hill was a stone church, and it was thatch on pillars. The altar was just a plain stones built into an altar with a slab on the top. And the wedding ceremony was there. It was absolutely glorious. It was a wonderful send-off for Jeremy and Mika. Um, Paul met Heather, um, and they got married in Bulawayo. Um, they were married at Riverside Church by uh, I kind of forgot that, but Riverside. They were married at Riverside Church, and uh, regrettably, that marriage didn't last as long as it should have done, perhaps. Um, but uh, Paul and Heather broke up. Now, Jeremy has got two boys, Stephen and Nick. Lovely boys, very, very clever, very, very bright, both of them. And they're both doing very, very well. Um, Stephen's got himself a job with appears to be with a mining group, and the potential for him to grow is great because of the advantages of being in a country like Australia, where the growth is great, and the mining, the potential is great. I believe the firm that he really works, the basic firm, is from Southern America, Brazil. But hello, Poppy. And in there, we've got a little dog called Poppy, and she's just come to say hello to me. So keep that in the story. But she's lovely, and she's a great friend of mine. So uh, she's a I'm not too sure what she is, but still. Then we've got uh, Paula's got three daughters, which I've mentioned. Debbie's got a boy and a girl, and that's Jonathan and Hannah. And Hannah's a school teacher in the New Forest, and it's rather a school that's a little bit, the people there seem to be a bit hard up. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but and she's teaching junior class. Jonathan, he's still at university at Canterbury, and he's doing virtually aeronautical studies as well, um, which is the mathematics and all that is far beyond all of us here. We just have to listen to it all. Um, but Jonathan stays in the house here when now we're in shutdown because of the virus, and uh, the virus has created havoc all over the world, really. And Paul got the virus in a very, very bad way. And we're very fortunate to have Paul with us. At Easter, we'd actually, of this year, 2020, we thought we'd lost him at Easter time. And but fortunately, Telford and Shrewsbury were the hospitals that were experimenting with using a particular drug, and Paul seems to be, I think, one of those that they used for experimenting on, and fortunately it worked. Now today, Paul has been moved he was moved from Telford to Shrewsbury, and then from Shrewsbury yesterday, which was he was moved to Bridge North, where he will recuperate and learn to walk again. Now it's the second time that Paul has had major incidents in his life. Uh, Fortunately, Jeremy has been fit, reasonably fit, except for his one problem with his back. And Debbie has been well, so Paul has been the one that's really had been through hell. He fell down a mountain in the Matopus. Well, it's not really a mountain, but it was full of sludge, and he was fortunate there. There were some chaps that managed to bring him up on a canvas sheet from the bottom. Fortunately, he was holding the hand of Laura, and he let her go, and when he slid, and otherwise he'd have taken her with him. But he was unconscious there for about 14 days. Paul has been 8 weeks in this Corvus thing, and he has really been very, very fortunate to survive. His mind is still all right, so we're very fortunate there. Fortunately, Deb's and Paul girlfriend is Sue, and she's been an absolute brick looking after or keeping in contact with everybody throughout the world. It's really been wonderful. And the prayer that's gone out for him has been wonderful. And one has to thank everybody for that prayer that's gone out. Oh, it was worldwide. We've still got a candle burning here, and it's burning in front of me right at the moment. It's been burning ever since Paul went into this. It's been for the full 8 weeks. We came back to Jersey in the year 2000, Margaret and I. And I think we've only been back, we went back to Zimbabwe just the once. And I don't, the radiator from Tinny had collapsed then, I think. It was all gone. In fact, it was quite funny. I was outside the post office in Bulawayo, and an African came up to me and greeted me. And he knew me, but he said, "It's Mr. Harris, isn't it?" And I wasn't Mr. Harris. But it was somebody that greeted me instantly, and I'd only arrived in the town within a few hours, and it was a wonderful experience. Just a silly thing like that, that someone greets you. But Bulawayo as a town was a lovely town, actually. It was very, very friendly. Where we lived out at the hillside dams, I used to be able to go home for lunch every day and come back and do it all inside an hour. Go for a swim during that period as well. So life was very, very good in Zimbabwe. I think that if only Robert Mugabe had carried on with Smith's ideas and they worked in parallel, I'm sure that the country would have been great, and the African development would have been great as well, because everybody was coming on so fast. It was wonderful to see, and the everything I felt was, I've always been a great lover of Rhodesia and Zimbabwe and the people. I think of them all the time. The hardships they're going through at the present moment, especially with water and the lack of water that is. They've been talking about for many, many years to get Zambezi water through to a dam halfway along the line. And they're talking about it again. But of course, they've spoken about for 50, 60 years. It should have been done, and Bulawayo would have been out of trouble. Fortunately for Bulawayo, there's a major aquifer which comes down halfway along the Victoria Falls Road, and they're able to pump water from there to the city. But they again, the city has only got water for 1 day or 2 days a week. I'm not too sure of my facts there. But the people mostly, they will have passed away now because I'm 90, so virtually 90, and a lot of those people that I knew will have passed on. But I keep watching Meg's Creel column. Now it's wonderful to hear in when you listen to the BBC and CNN, there are Zimbos there. There's Kim Chakanetsa. She's on the World Service of the BBC. There's Lobel, who calls himself Lobel, but he's one of the Lobels family, the bread makers. And there's Margaret Creel's daughter, I think, works for CNN. So the number of people that work for the media throughout the world is wonderful. And they're all Bulawayo people. The other Bulawayo person is Princess of Monaco. She's a Bulawayo girl. And a lot of these girls went to school in Bulawayo. And a lot of them, they change. They don't say they're from Zimbabwe or Rhodesia. They say they're from South Africa, which I suppose is a move on their part for political reasons, or just other people in this part of the world have different ideas. But I'm very proud of the time that I spent in Zimbabwe, and I think a lot of the people that I worked with, or the Africans and that, they will have passed on. But a lot of them will have passed on. And I think of them regularly. I do. I have a love for them. Rather silly sort of attitude to take as an employer, perhaps. But if one of the things that if I'd have carried on in business, and I had to pay out gratuities to the number of people that I got, the firm would have been bust in any case, no matter what amount of money that we had created. But still, what I did mention was on the hijack, and I forgot to say it yesterday, or I couldn't remember the words, were when these chaps got on board and the aircraft was taken off, they shouted, "Let's go, let's go, let's go." And every time they shouted that out, the plane seemed to jump up into the air. And I couldn't remember the words yesterday. But the trouble with getting old, you forget so many things so quickly. But that's been lovely. I don't think there's very much more I can talk about my life, but it has been a very, it's been a great, I've got a great family. I keep in touch with everyone as much as I can. And I'm grateful for the love that's passed backwards and forwards between us. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you very much to all of you. All of you. Thank you. Thank you.